Okay.
Well, hello, and welcome to this tutorial on running, drawing the anatomy of the running figure. As we embark on this thrill ride of just all kinds of anatomical fun and painting. I've decided that in order to make the next hour or so a little bit less dry and technical, I've invited a couple of friends to join us to help bring an element of discourse to this tutorial that might not otherwise be there. I'll still be talking as much as possible about the mechanics of what we're doing. At the moment here, I've started with DAZ Studio, and I'm posing a model, one of the default models that comes with the program. It's a free program, just to give myself a strong structure from which to work. Now, you may be looking at this and thinking, whoa, hang on, just wait there a minute, Tom. You're using DAZ models as the basis for your painting. That's tantamount to cheating, and in many ways you'd be right. But the important thing to remember is that the using of a 3D model should only ever really be a sort of foundational tool. It just helps me with the proportion and getting a composition that I feel works, and then all the sort of labour and man hours are still in there. To create an effect that's, I think you'll agree, truly unique. So before we go any further, I think maybe I should introduce the other people who are going to be contributing thoughts, questions, and discursive analysis over the course of the next hour or so. To my right is seated the lovely Zan Fee.
Hello.
Known on Twitter by the Poke and Huffington Post as one of the funniest females on Twitter. So go ahead and give her a follow. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
I was going to say that's an accolade that I've been writing for about 3 years.
Yes, well,
I'll do that a bit.
Yeah, and with good reason. And to my right, also, is Ewan Carroll, who will also be joining us.
Hello! I don't have any titles like Zan. I must say, Tom, that was a wonderful intro. I'm very impressed by your professionalism, although the phrase anatomical fun did sound rather untoward.
Ewan will be keeping me in check throughout the course of this commentary, so look forward to that.
Now, I am very much a layman, so if I ask anything that sounds a little stupid, please be forgiven.
Oh no, that's okay. Ewan will be adopting the role of kind of eager intern over the course of this discussion. So look forward to a lot of pressing questions from him. I've now rendered my DAZ model very simply using some default light settings. Well, not default, but just using one of the default lights, a directional light, I believe, and I think a little bit of shadow. And I've collected some photo reference there, as you can see. Now, I always tend to emphasise the importance of, particularly when doing something like this, an exercise that focuses on technical aspects, to get as much reference as possible. And I've collected a number of photographs. So that I have, so that I can take a number of different figures and figure out what are the anatomical commonalities, and sort of extrapolate those and apply them to my model, rather than stuff that's maybe unique kind of little idiosyncrasies that are specific to one person's anatomy. Everybody obviously looks different. Here I'm just, because I'm digital painting, I'm just putting a kind of bit of a texture in the background, just using the default brush, no fancy kind of shader presets or anything, just using default brush on a relatively low opacity to build up a bit of texture. Don't really like using fill tools for or lasso tools or anything for digital painting, because I feel it kind of robs you of a little bit of texture. And here I'm just blocking in my silhouette so that I can get a good sense of what the composition is going to look like. As you'll see if you read the article, I do find that having a strong silhouette there early on gives me a good sense of keeping all the anatomy and proportion in check. Now, just to round off Ewan's introduction, he is the host or co-host of the Flim podcast, which is a very entertaining film discussion podcast, which you can check out to your heart's content. SoundCloud be the best place to access that?
SoundCloud, it's also on iTunes as well. So if you just search Flim in all caps on iTunes, I would hope that it does.
Yeah, F-L-I-M.
But we are on SoundCloud under the name Flim McJimmerson.
Flim McJimmerson, there you go.
Now, I did want to ask Tom.
Go ahead, Ian.
Why do you apply a textured background before you get drawn? What's the importance of having some texture in the background?
Well, the importance for me is generally that I tend to at least like to kid on with these pieces that they kind of look like an actual painting rather than just looking like a digital kind of concept piece. Typically, I find that digital painting can have kind of a sort of homogeneous and sort of luminous look to it that can make it look a little bit weightless and a little bit lacking in texture. So I like so by laying down a foundation of texture to start with, then anything that I build on top of that is always going to have texture by default of the fact that it's laid on top of a sort of bed of texture. So much like if you were painting on canvas, you might do a sort of primer wash or set out a base coat, and that would give you, and you might do that in thick, broader strokes, which would give you a nice texture on which to work. But even if you don't, you've got the texture of the canvas there itself. With digital painting, you have no texture to start out with, so I always like to give myself a sort of a textured foundation from which to work. Here now, blocking in the my sort of base color for the body. Typically, I tend to use very specific CMYK color values. Although I did by mistake start this particular digital painting in RGB, which was just a bit of a technical snafu. But the colour values I used were sort of specific and broad enough that once I changed it back to CMYK, it didn't make too much of a difference. But yeah, I just like to use sort of a flesh tone that's maybe 4 parts, or what would it be? Well, maybe 40% yellow and 30% magenta as a nice sort of balance, and then just working on multiples or divisions of that to build up the highlights and the shadows. And then with things like reflected lights and things, reflected light, you can mix it up a little bit with what colours you put in your shadows and everything. Yes, sorry, does that answer your question?
Yeah, it very much does. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
And it does make sense to me as a layman, which I feel like I'm going to keep saying.
No, that's all right. You feel free to use
the way you described it, I get it. It makes it feel more tactile.
Tactile, exactly.
And that's more conducive to the creative process.
More conducive to the creative process, and it just gives a nice, particularly when work is designed for print as opposed to, which this is, as opposed to purely being seen digitally. It just gives a nice sense that that there's a kind of physical quality to it, a tactile quality to it.
Look at that glute.
Look at that glute, exactly. Yes, although I think, is it the pectineus? I can never remember the name of that muscle that comes around the edge, just bordering the great trochanter there, around the edge, and sort of leading into the iliotibial band. But when the leg is sort of crunched like that, it really does lead for a hell of a kind of pronounced bracket shape. It's quite striking, isn't it?
It's very striking indeed.
Do you find yourself drawn to that anatomy?
I can't help but think that it looks a little bit like the Flash right now.
Yes, well, the Flash.
The lack of hair being the helmet, you know.
The Flash was in.
I mean, you think running, you think the Flash.
Exactly. You think running, you think the Flash.
Exactly.
And so yes, that was very much my thinking going into this. It's very much a Flash style pose.
But the important question: which Flash?
Which Flash?
Is it Barry? Is it Jay?
I think it's Barry. Wally's like the 1940s one, isn't he?
No. That's Jay Garrick. Wally West is the 90s one. The rebooted one, the younger one. I believe he's the nephew of Barry Allen. He's like a fast talker and more of a joker, and he's not a forensic.
Oh, like Blur from Transformers.
Yeah, he's the one that was in all the Justice League cartoons, like the Bruce Timm ones.
Okay.
So he's very much like, until the Flash TV series, he was very much this generation's Flash in media, much like Jon Stewart is kind of this generation's Green Lantern, because he was in those Justice League cartoons.
Well, there you go, folks. A little bit of comics knowledge. Ewan brings a lot to the table, other than simply ignorance, which seems to be his primary.
Which I do have in spades.
Here I'm just establishing my. This tone I'm using for the shadows is an exact multiple of the flesh tone that I've used as the base coat. So instead of 40, a yellow value of 40 and a magenta value of 30, it's a yellow value of 80 and a magenta value of 60. As I explained in a colouring tutorial I did a couple of issues ago, when it comes to print particularly, but even just any kind of digital painting, using exact multiples of colour values to shade those colours is an extremely effective and time-saving way of choosing your colour palette. It looks it sort of looks very satisfying, but it's also very similar to the process of just adding white to mixed colours of paint, because essentially when you divide a colour value exactly, you are reducing its opacity or reducing its sort of level of colour, and therefore essentially adding white to it as a colour. And all I'm doing here is I'm kind of using the basic forms of that digital model, but looking to the photo reference and my own knowledge of anatomy to actually give those areas dimension in a way that, or give them reality in a way that a 3D model often doesn't. 3D models tend to look like 3D models, and unless they're built from scratch to adopt one pose, or specially adapted to flex all the muscles exactly, they're rarely a particularly convincing substitute for photo reference. But they do give you an incredibly good resource when it comes to giving your figure, to laying out your figures in the way that you want them to be in your panel. The photo reference helps you go in and fine tune all the details, help you make the muscles the right kind of weight and flex them in a way which is more anatomically accurate. Here the bicep's more flexed than it is in the model. You've got things like the veins popping out, which you wouldn't get from your dad's studio model either. The lighting's more nuanced. There's texture in the skin. The muscles are actually responding in the way that human muscles do, and connecting at the points where the muscles actually connect, like the pectoral muscle there is usually it's divided into sort of three distinct portions, one of which connects directly from the collarbone into the deltoid. And I think the bottom one actually connects to the underarm, and I think the other one maybe also connects from the deltoid to the sternum. I don't have my reference books on me, so forgive me if my off the cuff anatomical information is exactly correct. But any good anatomy book will serve you well, which might be a good opportunity to touch on which anatomy books you might want to invest in if you're thinking of doing so. In terms of purely structural anatomy, Byrne Hogarth's Dynamic Anatomy and Dynamic Figure Drawing are the sort of established classics. Andrew Loomis is a good person to look to for how to kind of render the figure and draw the basic shapes Oh, Ewan's phone's going off there.
I apologise.
How unprofessional.
I know, I was kind of, I didn't realise we were going to be doing this, and I entirely forgot to turn off my phone, but as a podcaster, it's something I should have been aware of, and I do apologise.
You'll be reassured to learn that Ewan is not being paid for this.
And my telephone is now on airplane mode.
Excellent.
I just put mine onto silent.
I should probably do the same.
Okay. I feel a lot better now.
Yeah. Sorry about that. Although, who's going to call me?
Well, mine is actually an alarm, so I feel even worse.
Yes, who's going to call me? Both my friends are here. What was I saying? Oh, yeah, the anatomy books. Yeah, Andrew Loomis is very good for the broader shapes of the figure and rendering it as a whole and making it look kind of believable and human and kind of pleasing to look at. Whereas Bern Hogarth's emphasis is more on the structure, the various muscle groups and everything. One thing that you won't necessarily get from most of the Bern Hogarth books, which you will get from Andrew Loomis, is the important thing to remember, or one of the important things to remember, is that the anatomy and its various components are three-dimensional objects that are all interrelated and everything. And as such, when you're rendering the anatomy and drawing even particularly muscular figures, not every muscle will be delineated. One of the common mistakes that I see a lot when looking at portfolios from budding artists is that they want to kind of, the way that they try and communicate strong musculature in a character is to basically put a line around every muscle. Often muscles that they don't necessarily know that well anyway, but they kind of forget about the larger forms and the fact that, you know, when an arm is under a strong light or whatever, you might only see a few of the defining edges of the muscles which are sort of starting to creep away from the light. You won't really see everything. As such, a lot of attention is being paid here to, you know, the areas of light and dark on the figure, as opposed to where every particular muscle is. All those knowledge of muscles should be there so that you can you can understand the underlying shapes of the body, but you don't need to physically draw everything on the page to be able to communicate it effectively. Does anybody at this stage, would anybody like to ask, as all I'm doing is kind of refining the rendering at this point, would anybody like to put forward any thoughts or ask any questions?
I'm trying to figure out if your collection of reference images were found in the back of a diary of like a 50s schoolgirl. Because see, when it goes to the wider shot, I'm just like, I can imagine her sitting with Pritt stick.
Yes, it does look that way.
Sam's, of course, referring to Tom's collage of muscular men.
Yeah,
which is perfectly acceptable as reference material.
Of course.
Perfectly acceptable
as leisure material.
Exactly. Although perhaps not one to open on the train.
No, perhaps not. But just remember, if you do have a collection of such images on your hard drive of anything that you think maybe sensitive material, and somebody finds it, remember always just to say that it's research. That's what Pete Townsend did, and it seems to have worked out pretty well for him.
Yeah, I don't believe anything ever came of that.
No, amazing.
Now, what's the most? This is another broad question.
Okay.
Broad strokes.
Broad strokes.
What's the most challenging thing about drawing convincing motion with a human?
The most challenging thing about drawing convincing motion, well, I suppose it depends what your approach is to drawing in general. If you're somebody who tends to exaggerate quite profoundly in your drawing, like, you know, somebody who draws maybe a more cartoonish style or a more abstracted style, then drawing motion is very much your kind of bread and butter. You know, everything is defined by motion. Okay. Limbs can become, you know, more kind of grotesquely abstracted in order to convey that. Whereas if, like me, you're somebody who attempts to have some kind of realism in the structure of the characters that is relatively consistent, it can be a bit of a challenge to suggest motion. in this particular instance, what I do, although it's not as evident in these early stages, I sort of soften the rendering on the areas of the body that are moving the fastest or moving the most. So the hands and feet here
are slightly out of focus.
Slightly out of focus.
Yeah, okay.
Exactly.
I get exactly what you mean.
I also do a slight sort of ghosting effect later on where I like kind of add extra legs and arms in intermediary positions and then sort of partially erase them.
Yeah, nothing too much.
Yeah, it's not something I would do in black and white line art because it would look too contrived.
Of course, yeah.
But in a painting where the rendering is a bit more subtle, you can get away with it a little bit more easily. In black and white line art, which is most of what I'm kind of known for in comics, yeah, motion's a tricky one. Typically, I would say that the way to get around it is not so much. I mean, like if you conveying action is one thing because, as I mentioned in the body text of the article, if you want to convey action, then a lot of that is just about emphasizing and exaggerating certain muscles that are performing, or certain parts of the anatomy that are performing sort of the most kind of crucial functions in the action. So in this instance, the legs, the muscles of the upper thigh, the biceps and everything, you kind of pump them up a little bit in order to suggest kind of adrenaline and all that stuff. But with general motion, things like just moving the camera to more dynamic angles, adding compositional elements, which I go on to do later, which suggest movement. So things which aren't necessarily tinkering with the anatomy itself, but rather,
We're just leaving that one, right?
Yeah.
Sorry.
I thought the laugh was enough.
Yeah, that's all right. Things that you can add to an image that suggest motion, with, like, for example, having everything converge to one vanishing point, which may be where the character is coming from or heading toward.
Okay.
And having a lot of elements of the environment align with that. Putting the camera in, more dramatic angles, like I'm trying to think what a good example would be. If you're drawing somebody running sort of desperately, you might want to put the camera at quite a low angle so that you can get a kind of good look at their face, and if you have even passing familiarity with comics, you'll know the kind of shots that I'm talking about, I think. So I hope that helps answer your question.
Yeah, indeed. Thank you very much.
No problem. Starting to add a few highlights here, and just kind of, you may think that I'm leaning a little bit too heavily on the photo reference here, but good photo reference is rarely a hindrance in your work. Even as somebody who knows anatomy relatively well, it always helps to have reference on hand, because even though you might know the underlying structures quite well, the way that they react to light and everything, it's very difficult to predict all of that off the top of your head. I know artists, comic book artists, who claim to never use reference material and can just see the body entirely three-dimensionally in their mind from any angle. And, they are often incredibly good at that, but their work is always better when they use some reference as well, just because there's always something that you would never think of right away. There's always a little discovery to be made in photo reference.
Now, do you ever find it difficult to find reference material for a particular sort of set of lighting or motion? For example, a guy running through a dark alleyway, and he's naked. Do you ever find, you have to find that reference material?
First of all, I suppose the thing that you kind of have to bear in mind is your photo reference. it may be difficult to find a photo reference of a naked man running down a dark alleyway.
Yeah,
but
it
it's
doesn't
not.
need to
But
be
it's not so difficult.
specific,
It's not so hard to find a photo of a dark alleyway and a photo of a naked man running.
I just meant in terms of like reference for like a lighting composition.
Oh, yes. Okay. Yes,
but
that's
I guess
true.
a lot of that sometimes you have to just interpret it yourself. How light would.
Well, that's where DAS often comes in so handy, is because you can light the figures yourself.
Yeah, I did actually see that earlier on at the beginning of the tutorial. You had like a spotlighting effect, which was quite cool. That highlighted. It looked like there was a spotlight coming down from the top.
Yeah, I can't remember if I used a spotlight or a directional light, but I think I might have at least started with a spotlight. The lighting tools in DAS do give you that ability to just get at least a basic sense of what areas are going to be in shadow and what aren't. And then you can maybe tailor your image search after that. I can't remember if I got my image. I think I got my images. I think I did the DAS model first and then collected my image. Now, with specific regard to sort of collating photo reference, and to hopefully answer the question, I collect photo reference all the time, or certainly there was a period of time where I collected it a lot, and I have a library of, I don't know, thousands of images which I pulled from the internet. There are books that you can buy specifically of artist models that come with discs with thousands of images on them. You can actually buy the poses individually online as well, but it tends to be better value just to buy a book. And there's a huge amount of reference there. None of the images that I've used as reference in this one actually come from those books. They're all from image searches online and things. And yeah, I would spend days sometimes. Well, this was before I had deadlines to meet. I would spend days just trying different search criteria to find really good images, looking on websites dedicated to photo reference and other subject matter which afforded a lot of results. Never be afraid to get adventurous in your searches for anatomy reference. They'll rarely let you down. You may find things in hitherto uncharted corners of the internet.
Your eyes have been opened.
Yeah. Oh yes, the scales have very much fallen from my eyes.
Within reason, certainly.
Yeah. And the yes, within reason. Sorry. Yes. Let's not go too far down the Pete Townsend route. I wasn't intimating that at all. But yes, there are certainly websites of an adventurous nature in which you can find extraordinary photo reference, and in which many of the photos that I've used as reference here do find their origins. Here, just trying to find a nice base tone. I really wanted a kind of minty or grassy or green colour, just to suggest kind of sportiness and athleticism, but in a sort of slightly more, I don't know, a slightly more older school. I kind of always, with these types of digital paintings, verging towards like Saturday evening post Art Deco type stuff, and you'll see maybe a little bit of that in the design elements that I incorporate later. Just because with these types of articles where you're trying to illustrate one point rather than convey a scene necessarily, I always like to incorporate some kind of background element or sort of design element that creates a more striking image, because I like the image to look like some kind of finished piece rather than just an academic exercise. But putting full backgrounds in would be pointlessly time consuming. So I just try and find little kind of like I say, design elements and stuff. In this case, background elements, and in this case, I'm using the background color maybe to try and create a source of reflected light that sits well with the body. Not quite achieving that at the moment. It doesn't look like a convincing shadow color right now. But that's something that I can play around with at leisure, because I've put all the flesh tone stuff on a separate layer, so I can manipulate the background completely independently of any of that. again here just using the musculature of the legs as seen in photographs and anatomy books. I mean, I could go into detail all the different names of all the muscles and everything, but I don't know that it would be of any great help in this particular tutorial because I can't label anything because my
pointing would help us.
Well, exactly. Pointing will help my students here, but it won't do you any good, I'm afraid. So you'll just have to take it as read that the.
We could back him up because he pointed at that one.
Oh, I see what you're pointing at right now. The magic of radio.
Yes, Ewan will figure out which muscle I'm pointing at and then point at it for your benefit.
We're doing it right now.
Incidentally, sorry about some of the video quality. I can see a lot of the images is quite pixelated and stuff. My export settings aren't always fantastic on these videos. I'm still learning some of the aspects of creating good video tutorials, but hopefully, despite the lack of full resolution, this will be of some help. And you've got the finished image to look at to your heart's content in the magazine, so you should get some idea of what the actual rendering looks like in detail. Now, was there a question there that I hadn't answered yet about?
I believe Zan had questions.
We have, as well as our contributors in the studio here, we also have a whole range of people out there online in the world at large who have their many questions and things for me on the subject of anatomy and painting and drawing in general. So whenever I do a new tutorial, I like to put out the word that if there's any questions that people want answered, I'll attempt to do that in the commentary.
And where can people ask you a question?
People can ask me questions on Twitter at JumbleCashback, JumbleCashback, or if they're fortunate enough to be friends with me on Facebook,
dogs.
Yeah, then they can ask me a question there. But we may have some coming in hot off the keyboard of some ardent fan.
I stuck my finger in my ear.
From the web.
Yes. Yes, the sound of a telegraph could not sound more modern.
This just is.
Right, from the ticker tape. What is our first question from the world at large? First of all, tell us who our questioner is for my many adoring fans. Who is it? What's the chap's name?
Cameron Foster.
Cameron. Right, yeah. So the first question is from my brother.
Oh.
What does old Cammy Face want? What does he want to know?
He's asking, have you ever finished a drawing and thought, I'd shag that? If so, which one?
Have I ever finished a drawing and thought, I'd shag that?
I think you have to have specifically thought that phrase.
I have to
not tap that.
Okay.
Get in about it.
Well, yes, no, I can answer the question. Those of me who are fortunate enough to be friends with me on Facebook will know that my avatar is a self-portrait. I'll leave it at that. Yeah.
There's no way you actually call your brother Old Cammy Face, right? That's not like an actual nickname.
No, I'm talking entirely extemporaneously. That's
okay. Good.
No, I've never referred to him as that in my life.
You could have kept up that lie going.
Old Cammy Face. Well, old Cammy Face.
That's what he was named. That was actually his christened name.
Yeah, old Stone Boots himself.
Old Shoes for the Goose.
Yep, old Milky Thighs.
Milky Thighs McGee, whose real name is Old Jodie's nephew, Mr. Cammy Foster. No, well, it would be nephew. Jodie Foster's son. Taxi driver. Let's get back on topic.
Oh, I don't think there's any need for that. But just to keep our readers happy, if there's any more questions from my adoring public?
Here's another one.
Another one. Okay, what's the chap's name?
Yes, that looks like Cameron Foster.
Cameron.
I believe I've heard of this guy. Good old Cammy Face.
Oh yeah, good old Stone Boots himself.
Goose spruce or whatever I said.
Boots for the goose.
Boots for the goose.
Good old Milky Thighs. What does old Cammy Face want to know?
This is a bit more wordful. Right, okay.
A bit more loquacious.
It's
that
written down.
Yeah.
Obviously, it became quite the thing to study anatomy as the Renaissance went on. He's obviously bucked up his ideas, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Who are your favourite late 15th to early 16th century jugglers?
Jugglers. Well, I'm a big fan of Keith the Juggler.
Keith David.
Keith David the Juggler.
Yeah, he's great, man.
He was
What
fantastic.
century was he kicking him
Oh, that's true. He might have been 14th century.
I think it was Balls in the Air Garbanzo who said, "You got a many balls in the air. That's a juggle."
That's true. His famous catchphrase, which has lived on through the ages.
I thought he was going to make a Ninja Turtles joke until the juggling thing. You know, because it's like...
He was a very prescient juggler, wasn't he?
Yeah. No, I meant the question. I thought old Cammy Face, Jodie Foster's son, I thought his question was going to be like, you know, who's your favourite 4 Renaissance artists? And then
I would have said
Michelangelo,
and
Leonardo, Donatello Versace, of course.
Yeah, and
Raphael Versace.
Yeah, and Diego Splinter.
Diego Splinter. And all the paintings they didn't like, they threw into the shredder.
Nice.
Yeah.
Of course.
Oh, that was no good at all.
Very good.
What was the jugglers? Yeah, the Great Garbanzo.
My favourite 15th century. I think my favourite 15th century and 16th century jugglers were Bebop and Rocksteady.
There was a wiggle room in the shoes McPhee who used to keep his juggling balls in the soles of his shoes.
Oh,
and then
yeah.
when he didn't have them, when he was juggling, shoes looked all floppy.
He was a lame, wasn't he?
He was a lame.
Yeah.
He actually, nowadays he would have had orthopedic shoes, but back then all he could afford was bean-filled sacks.
Well, I think we...
It's an education.
Yes, I don't think we need to say any more on that subject. Yeah. I've got finally going in and adding a few finer highlights here.
And is this lighting you're doing now?
This is lighting.
Okay.
Yeah, you'll notice that or you may once I've said it, that the lighting tends to be sort of degraded the further you go down the anatomy, as indeed are many people. But the strongest highlights will always be towards the top. The strongest shadows always towards the bottom. Again, that's just another case of remembering that as well as being a collection of individual forms, the body is a form unto itself. Therefore, will have elements of it that are whole areas of it that are further towards shadow and further towards the light. In this case, because we've got a fairly omnidirectional light source that's heading down from the kind of top right hand side of the frame, if you like. It's lighting the shoulder and the arm and the back of the head and that sort of that edge of the pectoral muscles, pectoralis major. It's lighting them more, and we're seeing a lot less of the muscle mass actually defined. Whereas on the legs, because we're further down and there's sort of medium light there, we're seeing a mixture of highlight and shadow. And then towards the bottom of the legs, you're seeing much more shadow and far less areas of light. This does have the effect that you can. I mean, dead lines are often a fickle mistress, and the knowledge that you can focus more closely on areas of the anatomy that are exposed to sort of medium light and things. It does give you a tremendous amount of room to economise on detail.
Does that affect when you're choosing your reference,
mm-hmm.
like the lighting? Like,
yes.
there's certain points where obviously you've got a building or something, so your lighting's been chosen for you.
Yes, although I try not to start with a reference photo. I'll try and start with either a 3D model or a sketch or something that's of my own creation so that I can light it myself.
Right.
And then I will try and choose reference that best
Works for
matches
lighting,
it. Yeah, exactly. Okay. So, for example, with these reference photos that I'm using here, I've compiled a selection of maybe sort of 8 or 9 different images that convey the figure in a similar position.
Old diary.
Yes, exactly. But a number of them don't really coordinate with the lighting I've chosen for the model, so I'm choosing only to focus on the ones that do.
Yeah.
And I'll generally I'll select my reference similarly.
Yeah, there was one I noticed there that looked like he was like crouching down, ready to pounce like a tiger, and I found it intimidating.
Yes,
it was
he's
only
an
there for a
intimidating
brief
man.
second, and I must say I was glad.
Wait till we get the glorious collage come back up.
That one was chosen specifically because he is a very kind of Venus sort of all the very. I suspect there may be some steroid use involved in his.
Yeah,
his
certainly. Yeah. I mean, I saw him for a second, and I thought this guy's juicing.
Oh yes. And
is that what the kids call it these days?
Juicing.
Oh yeah.
I believe so. Yeah.
And the so I chose him more as a reference point for kind of finer details of like veins and everything that I might want to throw in to an area that I felt was a little bit under rendered.
I mean, photos of those guys are specifically designed to highlight their musculature.
Yeah, and they get themselves pumped up beforehand and like eat a bunch of like
human growth
sugary
hormone
stuff. Yeah, because guys, if you eat a whole load of like sugar and things before those photo shoots, then all the veins pop out and stuff.
I drink so much Mountain Dew, that's why I look so ripped.
Yes, you may not be able to see. In fact, you definitely can't see from but you may be able to detect in Ewan's voice. Yeah. He's a tremendously powerful man.
I can crush melons betwixt my fingers.
That's true, and he's a good. What are you, 8 feet high?
9'2".
9'2".
Yeah, when I'm not crouched down, but I'm always crouched down because the roofs are so low everywhere.
Yes. He's 9'2" in the saddle.
My father was Herman Munster, and my mother was Brienne of Tarth.
Okay, I don't know who Brienne of Tarth is. Game of Thrones.
She's a tall lady.
Hey, Star Wars.
She was Captain Phasma. Captain Phasma from Star Wars. Barely, but...
Yeah, okay, well, to be fair, I didn't really get a good look at her.
Yeah, no, certainly not.
No.
But she did look just great in that disco ball outfit.
Mm-hmm. Yes, the wonderfully fleshed out character that was Captain Phasma.
To be fair, she's killed more people than Boba Fett already, so... Cinematically.
Okay.
Well, at least she gives that order at the start of the movie. You know, what does Boba Fett do? He's like... put Captain Solo in the cargo hold, and then what else does he say? He's like,
no,
is it Darth Vader that says put Captain Solo in the cargo hold? Either way, Phasma kills way more
He's
people.
worth a lot to me.
Yeah, he's worth a lot. He's no good to me, dead.
Oh, don't do that.
No, you've got to do
not the Jango Fett voice. I
one.
don't want that voice.
He's no good to me, dead. But yeah, Phasma has more confirmed kills than Boba Fett cinematically.
Yeah,
having appeared in less films.
To special edition Boba Fett, who's no good to us alive.
Yeah, Jeremy Bullock is apparently a bit of a... Well, let's not get slanderous, but I've heard he's not super nice when you meet him at conventions.
Yeah, Bullock by name, and...
Sandra Bullock in the movie where she plays a rude person by nature.
Yes. No, which Sandra Bullock movie is that?
It would be if there was a universe in which Miss Congeniality was the opposite of what it actually was. It would maybe be
so
that.
She was less congenial.
Well, no, actually, because she wasn't very congenial at the start, because she was a rough around the edges FBI agent who had to infiltrate a beauty pageant and so learned to become like a heteronormative woman.
And she has to tough it up, and then she does a thing.
I think she's pretty tough in Speed too.
Yes,
Demolition Man, which...
to be fair, in Speed 2, if we're talking about objectionable Sandra Bullock characters, I certainly felt insulted watching that film.
Did you ever hear the theory that Sylvester Stallone's her dad in Demolition Man?
Yes, I have heard that theory.
Very questionable. It's almost as if they went out of their way to come up with some sort of virtual way that they could do it, in case anyone figured it out.
Yeah, it's not so much, I don't think that the implication is that he's definitely her dad. It's just that they're anxious to not find out if he might be.
Yeah, she has that intuitive love of violence that seems to be like passed down through the Stallone genome. Although, that's not a trend that continued into the Rocky franchise, because we find out in Creed, he's like, oh, my son lives in Canada. He's some sort of banker or something. I don't know.
Ah, what a wonderful piece of textured backstory that is.
Speaking of texture.
Yes. Speaking of texture.
There we go.
Was that a question, or is that just a nice segue?
I was just seeking it up.
He's seeking me up. Okay, well, to be honest, very little of the texture is probably being conveyed in this
Are
video.
you still going for minty green? Because it still kind of looks like, that water with your paintbrush.
What watercolor?
No, when you're cleaning your paintbrush and you've got about 17 colours in there. And
Oh, yes.
it's less minty.
I must say, we're really starting to see those details emerge on the torso and stuff, and a lot of that work that you did on the thighs really popping now.
Thank you.
I'm interested to see where we go with that. I know you said you tend to keep the forearms and lower legs, perhaps slightly more out of focus, but I'm interested to see what sort of stuff you do with that.
Well, the majority of the detail does go into the sort of central portions of the body here.
Of course, as you said, yeah, the areas that would be most affected by the line.
And yes,
obviously in focus.
Yes, both of those things, and also just because they're sort of central in the image, your eye is drawn to them more.
Yeah.
So you can get away with less in terms of rendering. Wherever the focal point of the image tends to be, that's usually where you have to concentrate hardest in terms of rendering and anatomy and everything to make sure everything's spot on. I'm just at the moment I'm just trying to kind of erase a little bit in those areas of deep shadow to get a sense of reflected light from the sort of to imply that the environment, in this case the sort of green kind of surrounding, is reflecting slightly in the colour. I'm not sure I really achieve it properly in this particular example. I sort of abandoned it a little bit towards the end, but it was a noble goal, I think.
Were we supposed to agree there? Was that a pause?
Some of the worst things ever have been done with good intentions.
Yeah, that's true. For those of you, again, who can't actually see what's going on in the room, typically after I make any kind of assertion about anatomy and everything, everyone else in the room nods very
tacitly.
Yes.
It's because you surround yourself with yes men.
That's exactly why.
Yes, it is. You're right, sir.
See, now, do I agree with that?
I certainly do.
Yes.
I feel like now I've surrounded myself with yes men.
I'm genuinely concerned.
It's difficult to say. If you are a yes man in a room full of yes men,
how do you know?
Yes, that's true. Does it make a noise?
That should have been the slogan to the movie Yes Man.
What if you are a yes man in a room full of yes men? How do you know? It rolls off the tongue.
Well, just like if you're a yes man, how would you know? And then the answer would be go lugeing, bungee jump, other things. That film was very good.
Yeah, I know. I can't help but feel that film would have been more interesting if they got in the more review with Forrest McNeil direction.
Yeah, the one like if you just said yes to a bunch of horrible things.
Yes, I'll be a drugs mule.
If I had found out someone in my life was living the yes man plan, I would go up and just demand they do all the horriblest things. Eat this glass. Eat this glass now.
Eat the pennies.
I feel like all I can think about is eating glass. Eat the pennies, but chew them. Chew those pence. Check if it's a real coin. Check it.
That only works with gold.
Eat this tuppence.
We haven't used gold as currency since the days of Keith the Juggler.
Of course, and Buzzy Belmondo. Of course, nowadays all we use is sterling silver.
Yes, that's true.
And contactless. People love contactless, but I tell you, I don't trust it.
Yeah,
I like to take my money out because at least then it's in my hand for like a little bit. There's a step between it being in my bank and it being gone. I don't like it to just be ethereal.
Yeah, nothing gives me a greater sense of security than not having to input my PIN code when I use my card.
Yeah, that's no good. But then the contactless thing, I feel like there could be a villain who runs around with like a scanner and he's just contactless taking everyone's money.
You missed the mime there. It was beautiful. He's just evil contactless man.
I looked like I was stacking shelves furiously.
Yes.
That's true. As our character here may well be wont to do.
What, run away from this conversation?
Yes. But also stack shelves furiously.
He certainly looks furious.
He does. Yeah, well,
I've chosen the iron on. So.
I've chosen to emphasise the veins in the arms and pump up the biceps and everything, and the the extensors of the advancing leg.
And it does add an intensity.
I like to think so.
Well,
An
it adds a sense
intensity,
of urgency.
intensity.
Intensities.
Yeah.
Let's just do Wayne's World.
Yeah.
And I can't help it. Every time I see him turn blue, I know it's like, oh wow, it's Dr. Manhattan. I know the one key difference being that Dr. Manhattan, well, there's a lot more of him whenever you see him.
Well, yes, I should point out that I have left out one keynote of anatomical interest in this particular.
Although this angle, really.
Well, that's true. Yes, it could just be in motion, and it doesn't seem to appear in any of the other reference photos I've used.
Oh no, he's yeah.
If it did, I would have scrupulously edited it out for the sake of this video.
Of course.
Well, I wouldn't want to scandalise anybody.
You definitely just have text flash up at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Warning: this video hangs down.
Trigger warning.
Yeah, this is a real trigger for me. Watercolors are a trigger for me.
Specifically, Megatron's trigger.
Oh no. Let's not get into a Transformers thing yet.
No, let's not. Certainly not on the subject of Megatron's trigger, which I always feel should be an interest in the Visprofanosaurus.
Be a good band name.
What, Megatron?
Yeah, man.
Yes, Megatron's trigger would be an excellent band name. Ah, right,
What
here
are
I
you
am.
doing here?
Well, I'm beginning to add some design elements, although I decided that trying to guess the dimensions of an equilateral triangle by eye probably isn't the easiest thing in the world, so I just import an image of one. Here I'm just defining some of the shadow on the lower leg and everything, trying to create an even greater sense of dark and light between the top and the bottom of the image. And again, using that as a means of economizing on detail. Again, sorry if the image quality is very grainy. Something I'm going to have to really watch in my export settings. I do apologise about that. I will endeavour to improve for next time.
Live and learn. I must say, it does look perfect from here, but I have terrible eyesight and I'm sitting quite far away because my voice is so loud.
I may be able to remaster these at some point because I do have the original raw capture, which is very good definition.
Because you always intended to have banthas walking around in the background of all these tutorials, right?
That's true. That's why I used a placeholder actor here.
Running Man is important because he's a funnier character than we've ever done before.
Yes, that's true. He's really the key to the whole trilogy.
You know, like the reference material, it's like poetry, it rhymes.
Every verse rhymes with the last one.
It'll work. Hopefully it'll work.
That's the idea, anyway.
We're just quoting George Lucas, guys. I do apologise.
Yeah, I know. The discussion may have become somewhat arcane for
Anton
mass
Arcane.
consumption. Yeah, but
Swamp Thing's main antagonist.
But let's face it. If you're reading ImagineFX and you don't know Star Wars, then
or Anton Arcane,
then you've bought the wrong magazine by mistake.
Yeah, you.
That's the only explanation.
Normie Cooking and Sports.
That's the target market. I've never seen Star Wars.
Gun Hunters UK.
Yes. Fox and Hound.
Bass fishing.
It's bats.
No, bass guitars. And it's spelled fish like the band Fish with PH.
Oh, I see.
FIPH.
Bass fishing. Okay.
Yeah, bass fishing. Derek Smalls in profile. How does the bass man do it? And he's got a bass that's shaped like a fish.
Of course.
Other publications include Drum Snorkeling.
Why not? Why the wonderful?
Anyone else heard Monkey Tales?
Yes.
It's just a title.
I hope this attempt to add texture not only to the painting but also to this commentary by introducing the rogue element of a completely kind of stream of consciousness type of human being has.
I do apologise.
No. I think the proof of the pudding will be very much be in the reception that this this video
Well,
gets.
you need to get it okay, don't you?
I don't know. Well, I don't know if the editors at ImagineFX actually watch these videos all the way through. I suppose this is as good a litmus test as any.
Hello.
Yeah.
I think we've been. I don't know. I've really tried my best to ask proper adult questions.
That's true.
It's like I tried really hard to be adult.
And earlier on, you said pectoralis major, and I really wanted to say that sounds like a constellation, but I didn't.
That's true. Well, in that
Restraint.
it has a Latin name.
Yes.
Yes. Well, a lot of things.
Isn't that the Big Dipper?
A lot of things have Latin binomials. You know, plants, animals, constellations,
Algae.
Algae. Yes. Are they a plant or an animal?
Is it a plant? Is it an animal? It's like mushrooms. Fungi.
Yeah. I suppose the real question that in regard to whether algae is an
Is who
animal
really
or plant
killed
is.
Kennedy? Was there a second shooter?
Yes, that is the real question.
Was he a fun guy?
Mushroom thing.
No, the real question is, it doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
Does it matter if it's a plant or an animal? It doesn't move or do anything.
Yeah, but it allows us to breathe, doesn't it?
What, algae?
Yeah. If it chose to, we wouldn't be able to breathe.
It's like,
No, yeah, I
no more
believe
air for
algae
you.
produces like a lot of oxygen.
God. So algae are, algae are our friends.
Yeah,
Be
algae are
nicer
like...
to algae, more
Dude.
the algae.
Well,
Dude,
with
it's not just the soup.
no, with friends like that, I don't need no enemies.
Nice.
And we had fungi, and
They were doing well.
what would the Terminator say if he was floating on the top of the sea? He would say, algae back. I just made that up. Wasn't very good. Although I must say, I cannot help but think of a young Arnold in Terminator when I look at this guy, you know? Because I mentioned an alleyway earlier on.
He's also got a bit of Robert Patrick going on in that
Well,
running
he's
style,
more
isn't he?
lean. He's got that...
Yeah.
He's not quite as beefy. Because Patrick in that movie, if you look at him, he's super lean, man.
Yeah, but I mean, Schwarzenegger doesn't do a whole lot of running, does he, in Terminator?
No, but he does in The Running Man, which is also...
Oh, that's
good
true.
fun.
He does in The Running Man.
That's true.
Not
Not as much as you'd think.
No, I was disappointed when I saw that film.
Yeah, and it's like Forrest Gump. There's not even any forests in it. There's
Or
tons
Gump.
of running.
Oh no, there's Gump.
There is Gump.
There is Gump.
There's plenty of Gump.
Mm.
I don't think there's any algae though.
I imagine there may be a little bit in some of the Bubba Gump stuff.
Algae back. It's because he's got algae all over his back because he's so muscular that he can't actually...
That's another nickname for my brother, Algae Back.
Algae back. Oh, good old Kami face. Filled boots goose.
Mm-hmm. Here I'm highlighting the
Dorsal fin.
the biceps femoris, I believe they're known, the hamstring muscle. Because, as I mentioned in the body text of the article, the muscles of the upper leg flex and extend very similarly to those of the arm. They're a little bit more complex in some areas, but if you, I'm sure you may have noticed at some point in the past if you do sort of weight training or anything, and
Remember our massive friend in the corner?
yes, of course, yes, well, Ewan is well experienced with weight training, being a 9'2" behemoth of a man.
I am proficient in weight training. In fact, I have been training my entire life. Now, I can see that you've sort of added those lines there, sort of just further away. Is that what you were referencing earlier on? You said you sort of added in vague shapes to convey the movement.
Yes.
Almost a blur where the leg was before.
Yeah, it's a little bit heavy-handed here. I do try and sort of soften it a little bit later. It's not. It's a little bit of a cliche idea, to be honest.
No, of course. Yeah, I mean, it's even something you see in the Golden Age and stuff, you know. But hey, if it's done well, then
Yeah, but it works.
Well, yeah, yes, but I mean, I don't know. It's a bit Roadrunner, isn't it?
Hey, but yeah, Roadrunner is cool or whatever.
It reminds me. It reminds me of something else. So I can't think what it is. Something more. Oh God.
It reminds me. It does remind me of a corporate logo. I don't know what one is.
Yes, well,
once
the design elements come in, you'll find it very difficult not to imagine this logo or this image sandwiched between the words 1982 Commonwealth Games.
Yes.
But
I remember those games well.
But
That's a medal.
You want a medal?
Want to medal? You've medalled enough, Zan.
It seems Zan has another accolade to her name. She won a medal in the 1982 Commonwealth
For
Games.
the 50th.
What was
2
that?
years before
That
I
was
born.
prenatal gymnastics, was it? Yeah.
This is really coming together now.
Thank you.
In fact, I'm amazed that just by applying layer after layer of paint, we've managed to really just come up with something so detailed.
I like you use the term "we" there.
Oh my gosh, I did as well, didn't we?
How sped up is this? Because this is over like...
This is sped up to...
I feel like I've been on a journey with you. That's why I said it.
Thank you.
Is this 60 speed?
I think this is maybe 8 times the speed, because it's I think maybe the initial portion was 6 times, and then the rest is 8 times, because I believe the whole process took somewhere in the region of 8 or 9 hours.
Yeah, I said 60. I don't think I understand numbers.
Here are those design elements I was talking about, which are very suggestive. Of,
Very Illuminati.
Yeah. But I was going for sort of Art Deco Saturday Evening Post type stuff, and I've ended up with horrible
It looks like
early 80s. If anything, you're lucky this wasn't drawn in coloured pens.
It's got like an Atlas shrugged, then got up for a run type deal.
Time is beginning to draw in like a heavy cloak of the night.
Or like curtains on a winter evening on the moors.
Yes, or like a person retiring to bed after a hard day chopping wood.
Or indeed like a Tom Foster anatomy drawing lesson.
Yes, and I think on that note we shall leave it. We hope you've enjoyed this journey through the human figure with us, and certainly hope you'll join us next time. Look out for my other video tutorial, which will be accompanying this issue, on drawing an old woman's face, and that's all the time we have. So thanks very much for joining us. I've been Tom Foster. This has been Zan Fee.
Sure.
And you and Carol.
I love you. Bye.
And we bid you good night.
Good night.